Welcome to the Deep Dive. Ready to explore some seriously thought-provoking stuff? Today we're diving into Insecure in Love by Dr. Leslie Becker Phelps. We've got an excerpt, and it's all about navigating those tricky parts of relationships, like forgiveness, and even, well, figuring out when it's time to move on.
Yeah, this excerpt is packed with insights. Insecure in Love really digs deep into how those early relationship patterns, the attachment styles we develop, can actually impact our love lives years later.
Let's break it down, starting with forgiveness. The book doesn't sugarcoat it. Forgiveness, it's a whole process, not just saying it's okay and boom, everything's fine.
It really is. Think of it more like tending to a wound. You've got that internal work dealing with your own hurt, and then there's that relational aspect, like how do we move forward from this together?
There's this quote from Jack Kornfield in the book that I just can't shake. It says, "Forgiveness is a vow not to carry bitterness into the future, to decide to give up hope for a better past." Deep stuff, right?
It really hits you. It makes you realize forgiveness is a choice. It's not about forgetting or saying what happened was right, but about actively letting go of that anger.
But how do we actually do that? Saying the words is one thing, but truly letting go, that's a whole other challenge.
The book has some practical steps, actually. One that stood out to me was try to remember a time when you were forgiven. Think about how it felt and how it changed things with that person.
Wow, yeah, that's a good one. You're switching perspectives. You're seeing it from the other side.
It can help you tap into some compassion, both for yourself and for your partner. And there are these exercises in the book about understanding and accepting those tough emotions you're feeling. It all ties back to this thing called mentalization.
Mentalization. Sounds kind of technical.
It's simpler than it sounds. Basically, it's about seeing things from your partner's point of view, even if you don't agree with what they did. Let's say they got super defensive during an argument. Mentalization means trying to see WHY. They might be reacting that way. Are they feeling unheard? Maybe a bit insecure. Doesn't excuse their behavior, but it helps you grasp what's driving it.
So it's like stepping back, seeing that bigger picture, not just reacting in the heat of the moment. Got it.
It's that back and forth between tuning into your own feelings and trying to get where your partner's coming from. Really powerful for fostering forgiveness.
The book also makes this point that for forgiveness to truly work, there needs to be this sense of safety. If you're still feeling vulnerable, letting go of the hurt is really hard.
Absolutely. The book uses some great examples. Imagine a partner who's struggling with alcoholism. If you see them actively in recovery, going to meetings, truly committed to getting better, that can build a sense of safety that allows forgiveness to even be possible.
Or think about infidelity. If you see genuine remorse, if they're completely transparent, really dedicated to earning back trust, those actions can help pave the way.
Exactly. It's not condoning the behavior. It's about seeing that your partner's owning up to it, showing a commitment to change.
Makes total sense. It's like trying to, rebuild trust on shaky ground. You need that solid foundation first.
That's a good way to put it. Choosing to focus on building a healthier future together rather than staying stuck in the past.
Okay, but what about those times when forgiving just seems impossible? Like the hurt is so deep, the betrayal's so big that you start questioning if staying together is even an option.
That's such a tough spot to be in. Thankfully, Insecure in Love tackles it head on. It actually gives you some helpful things to consider when you're facing that decision.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Well, first, it encourages you to really look at the overall health of the relationship. Does it line up with, what we need for a truly secure bond? Things like feeling emotionally safe, feeling supported, genuinely valued. Can your partner consistently provide that?
I see what you mean, but sometimes letting go of anger feels impossible. What can we do about that?
That's where those practical steps we talked about come in. Remembering a time you were forgiving can be huge. It reminds us that healing is possible and that relationships can move forward from even really difficult places.
That's interesting. It makes me think about how much power there is in choosing to forgive for ourselves and for the other person.
It's tough, no doubt, but it can be incredibly freeing.
Okay, so we've got overall relationship health.
Right.
What other factors does the book say we should think about when making this decision?
It pushes you to consider how clearly you've communicated what you need and what you want. Have you been upfront with yourself and with your partner about what you're looking for in the relationship?
Oof, good point. I've definitely been guilty of expecting my partner to just magically know what I'm thinking or feeling.
Happens to the best of us. But if we haven't actually said it out loud, it's hard to know if they're even capable of giving us what we need.
It's like we're setting them up to fail, right?
And then there's this other crucial question the book brings up. Does your partner consistently treat you with respect? I think that one speaks for itself.
It really does. But I've been in situations where, even though I felt deeply disrespected, I stayed because I was terrified of being alone.
That's understandable. Fear is powerful. But the book reminds us that we deserve to be in relationships where our needs are not only acknowledged, but actually met.
Okay, so we've got overall relationship health, communicating our needs, the importance of respect. Anything else to add to the list?
The book warns us about public perception versus private reality. Just because a partner might seem perfect on the outside doesn't mean that's how they act behind closed doors.
Oh, man, I've been there, putting on that happy face for everyone else. But inside, it's a different story.
Trust your gut. If something feels off, you've got to have those tough conversations. Maybe even get support from close friends who can give you an outsider's perspective.
Sometimes the people closest to us can see patterns we miss. They can help us figure out if it's our insecurities talking or if there are some serious red flags we're overlooking.
Exactly. It's about finding the courage to face those uncomfortable truths and then making decisions that align with what truly matters to us, our own well-being.
So let's say you've done all that soul searching and you've made the decision. It's time to move on. What does the book say about actually navigating that breakup? Because it can be heartbreaking.
It starts by stressing how important it is to have a strong support system in place before you even end things.
Wait, seriously, before the breakup, why is that so crucial?
It's not about bad-mouthing your partner or anything like that. It's about having a solid base of friends and family who'll be there for you during this transition. Because breakups can feel like your world is falling apart. Having those trusted people to offer comfort, validation, encouragement, it can be a lifeline.
I get it. When I went through my last breakup, my friends were absolute lifesavers.
Yeah,
Letting me cry, vent, reminding me I was worth something when I felt totally lost.
exactly. It fills that void of connection. It reminds you you're not alone, even when it feels that way.
So building that support system is key.
Yeah.
What else does the book recommend?
It also talks about letting yourself grieve the relationship, even if you're the one who decided to end things.
That seems kind of counterintuitive. Why would you grieve something you chose to end?
Because even if the relationship wasn't healthy, even if it wasn't working, it was still a part of your life. There were hopes, dreams, shared moments. Grieving that lost connection is healthy. Feeling sad, angry, heartbroken, whatever comes up, it's all okay.
So it's about acknowledging the reality of what you lost, even if ultimately it was the right decision.
Exactly. Don't bottle up those feelings. That never ends well.
Okay, so we've got support systems and allowing ourselves to grieve. What about coping with those emotions? Any suggestions from the book?
It emphasizes making healthy choices. It's tempting to go for those quick fixes when you're hurting, overeating, drinking too much, going on shopping sprees.
Oh, tell me about it. Ben and Jerry's and online shopping have gotten me through my fair share of rough patches.
Been there. But in the long run, those things can actually make it harder to move on.
Okay, so what are some healthier options?
The book is all about prioritizing self-care, making sure you're sleeping enough, eating well, moving your body, and doing things that bring you joy and a sense of peace.
So basically, treating ourselves with the same kindness we'd offer a friend going through a breakup.
Precisely. You deserve that same level of care.
This is all great advice. I'm already feeling a bit more hopeful. What else does the book suggest?
One thing that stuck with me was try to find some meaningful work to engage in. This could be anything, like volunteering or pursuing a creative passion, maybe going back to school or starting a new project.
That's an interesting one. Never really thought of work as a way to cope with a breakup.
It's about finding something that gives you a sense of purpose, accomplishment, something that taps into your strengths and reminds you of your value and what you're capable of. It doesn't have to be about helping others, but the book does say that acts of service can be really healing during times like these.
I can see that. Shifting your focus outward, connecting with others, making a positive contribution, sounds pretty empowering.
It really is. It's a powerful way to reconnect with your own strength and resilience.
Okay, so we've talked about support systems, allowing ourselves to grieve, making healthy choices, finding meaningful work. What else? This is a lot to take in.
Well, there's one more piece of advice we should touch on. It's something a lot of people struggle with after a breakup, the urge to get back together with their ex.
Oh yeah, the X factor. Tell me about it. It's so tempting to romanticize the past, to convince yourself that things will be different this time.
It's totally normal. It's part of grieving, that longing for what was familiar, especially when things feel so painful. But Insecure in Love has some good strategies for resisting that urge.
Okay, tell me everything.
We'll dive into those strategies and more when we come back for part two, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to the deep dive.
Oh,
Before the break, we were talking about resisting that pull to get back with your ex. It's something so many of us grapple with after a breakup. So what does Insecure in Love have to say about handling those moments of weakness?
one of the first things the book suggests is to remember why you left in the first place. Think about those deal breakers, those fundamental things that just weren't compatible, the things that ultimately led to the end.
It's like having that tough conversation with yourself, right? Reminding yourself of the reasons, even when it's hard.
That's it. And sometimes you might find yourself flooded with all those good memories. The book suggests a reality check in those moments. Were those happy times really the norm? Or were they overshadowed by all the pain, the conflict, the neglect?
That's a really good point. It's easy to look back with rose-colored glasses, especially when you're feeling lonely. But those happy memories don't always tell the whole story.
Exactly. And instead of going straight to your ex when those feelings hit, the book recommends reaching out to your support system. Talk to a friend, a family member, a therapist.
That makes sense. They can give you that perspective from the outside, help you process everything, and remind you of your worth and why you moved on in the first place.
Right. It's about getting that loving, objective support when you need it most. And finally, the book has this reminder that can be so comforting in those moments of weakness. This too shall pass.
Man, I needed to hear that. Sometimes it feels like the pain will never end.
It can definitely feel that way, but remember, those intense emotions will eventually fade, and you will find your way back to solid ground.
It's like riding a wave, I guess. You just got to hold on and trust you'll reach the shore eventually.
Love that analogy. And even if you do slip up, you reach out to your ex or whatever, the book really stresses self-compassion. We all make mistakes, especially when we're hurting.
Yeah, it's easy to get down on ourselves when we don't handle things perfectly.
Totally. But it's about acknowledging the slip up, learning from it, and moving on with kindness toward yourself. Healing takes time. There will probably be bumps along the way.
Okay, so we've covered a lot here. The nuances of forgiveness when moving on might be the best choice, the importance of support, self-compassion, healthy coping mechanisms. And throughout it all, we've seen how much our attachment style plays into how we navigate these things.
It's like having this whole new way of seeing those relationship patterns. Insecure in Love really helps you connect the dots between those early attachments from childhood and how they show up in your love life.
I'm curious, have you seen this play out in your own life?
Oh yeah, for sure. For years, I struggled with feeling insecure in my relationships, constantly needing reassurance, getting anxious when my partner needed space. It wasn't until I started learning about attachment styles that I realized these patterns were coming from, way back.
So understanding your attachment style helped you make sense of those behaviors.
Totally, like a light bulb went off. Suddenly, I could see why I was reacting the way I was. But more importantly, I realized I could actually change those patterns.
Wow, that's incredible. It sounds like it was quite a journey.
It was a lot of self-reflection, some therapy, but honestly, my relationships are so much healthier and more fulfilling now. And that's what's so amazing about this work. It's never too late to learn and grow.
That's so encouraging to hear. So if understanding our attachment style is that important, how do we even start to uncover those patterns in our own lives?
Well, the book goes deep into the different attachment styles, secure, anxious, avoidant, fearful, avoidant. It even has some quizzes and exercises to help you figure out your own style.
That sounds helpful. Knowing your style has got to be the first step, right?
It is. Once you have a better handle on your own attachment patterns, you can start to see how they might be affecting your current relationship. Are you super clingy, distant? Do you have trouble trusting? Are you scared of getting too close? These are all questions that can point you in the right direction.
And once you figure out those challenges, what then?
That's when the real work begins. The book has all these strategies for working with your attachment style, from building self-awareness to getting better at communicating to setting boundaries. And it encourages therapy if you feel stuck or if those attachment patterns are causing real problems in your relationship.
So it's not about becoming someone totally different. It's more about learning how to manage those tendencies that come with your attachment style.
You got it. It's about gaining that self-awareness and learning the skills to create healthier, happier relationships.
What strikes me is how this whole conversation about forgiveness and moving on is so tied to our attachment styles. It's like they're two sides of the same coin.
Couldn't agree more. If we can just become aware of those patterns, if we can see how our attachment style might be contributing to the problems, we have a way better chance of making positive changes.
It's about taking ownership of our own
Mhm.
stuff, right? Not blaming our partner, but also not taking all the blame ourselves.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance, seeing how past experiences might be affecting us now, and making conscious choices to break free from those old patterns.
I feel like we could talk about this forever. It's such rich and important stuff. But before we get too carried away, we should probably move on to the final part of our deep dive.
Sounds good to me. Excited to share some more insights with you and the listeners.
Welcome back to the deep dive. As we've been talking about insecure in love, one thing that keeps popping up for me is even in a good relationship, having a little bit of independence can be so important. What are your thoughts on that?
It's huge. The book talks about how if you become too dependent on your partner for all your happiness, it can actually backfire. It can put a strain on the relationship.
It's like putting all your eggs in one basket, right?
Right.
Not the best strategy.
Exactly. When you're looking to your partner to be your everything, for entertainment, emotional support, validation, it puts so much pressure on them. And it can lead to feeling suffocated, even resentful.
So it's about maintaining your own sense of self outside of the relationship, having your own interests, friends, things you're passionate about.
Absolutely. It's about bringing your best self to the relationship, not expecting your partner to, complete you. And this is especially important for people with an anxious attachment style.
Why is that?
Well, someone who's anxious might cling a little tighter, always needing reassurance, but if they focus on building their own independence, that self-sufficiency, it can help them challenge those anxious tendencies. It creates a more secure base for the relationship.
So it's not about being detached or emotionally distant. It's more about finding that sweet spot, that balance between connection and, being your own person.
That's it. Intimacy and autonomy. Connected, but also able to stand on your own 2 feet.
This makes me think about something we talked about earlier, the connection between forgiveness and safety. You almost can't have one without the other.
I love that parallel. The book emphasizes that real forgiveness just can't happen if you don't feel safe in the relationship. It's like if you have a wound, you have to keep it clean and protected for it to heal, right?
And that feeling of safety doesn't just appear out of thin air. It takes consistent actions, behaviors that build trust.
Absolutely. The book has some good examples. If your partner's had issues with addiction, seeing them in recovery, going to meetings, doing what it takes to stay sober, that can really help rebuild that sense of safety.
Or if there's been infidelity, seeing true remorse, that transparency, that commitment to earning back trust, those are the things that can make forgiveness a possibility.
It's about seeing your partner own up to their mistakes and actually trying to change those harmful patterns.
This all makes me think about how crucial good communication is in any relationship, especially when you're dealing with forgiveness, working through tough stuff. What are some of the key takeaways from Insecure in Love when it comes to communicating well?
The book really stresses being direct, being assertive, but also respectful and compassionate when you're sharing what you need.
It's like walking that tightrope, right?
Yeah.
Standing up for yourself, but also being mindful of your partner's perspective.
Exactly. And it cautions against falling into that trap of expecting your partner to just know what you want. That just sets everyone up for misunderstandings and resentment. Instead, be willing to say what you need clearly and calmly without blaming or making them feel bad.
And being open to hearing your partner's needs too, right?
Yeah.
Creating that space where they feel safe to express themselves.
That's it. It's about building that mutual respect and understanding, where both partners feel heard and valued.
Sounds so simple, but man, it's something so many of us struggle with.
It is. But the good news is, Insecure in Love gives you some really practical tools for getting better at communicating. It has exercises for figuring out what your needs are, expressing them in a healthy way, and practicing active listening. And remember, communication is ongoing. You've got to keep working at it.
So true. It's like a muscle you have to keep flexing. Well, as we wrap up our deep dive into Insecure in Love, what's the one thing you hope our listeners walk away with?
For me, the biggest takeaway is that relationships are a journey. They're not a destination. They're constantly evolving. And they take effort, they take communication, they take a willingness to grow, both as individuals and as a couple. But the rewards are huge.
I love that. When we invest in building healthy, fulfilling relationships, we're really enriching our lives in such a profound way.
We get to experience deeper love, deeper connection, deeper intimacy. And that makes life so much more joyful, so much more meaningful.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
So to all our listeners out there, keep learning, keep growing, and keep choosing love. Until next time, happy diving.